long it's gonna take. We are live. Over to you, Hartley.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Big Burnout Conversation. I have literally lost count now of what number conversation we're on. Kelly, do you have that number? I feel like it's 10? 10 or 11?
We've definitely done more than that. I will. I'm going to take a look because I need to know.
Kelly's going to count up because we need that number. We have had a great week. Both Kelly and I are beautifully exhausted from holding such a wonderful space for so many people this week. We have seen a lot of common themes, which has been really interesting. So lots of common themes around people that are really passionate about their roles, people who are afraid of failing, people who are afraid of the perception of what burnout and taking time off for burnout means and feels like. Today we are joined by the fabulous Ben Rainforthgott, who is going to talk to us about his very real and very raw and recent, all the R's, real, raw and recent burnout experience to help other people, hopefully to kind of feel seen and heard. So I'm joined today by Kelly. So this is the first, one of the last, but also the first burnout conversation we've managed to have with both of us on. So Ben,
this is our 15th.
Special.
This is our
15.
We were due to have 3 more today, but now we've we were due to have 3 more today, but now we've got 2. So we will have done 17 by the end of today, plus all the resources, plus all of the other conversations that we've been doing, plus all of the posts, plus everything else. So I think we are deserved of some happy exhaustion, actually. Everything else that will help. So I'm going to congratulate us on all of those conversations, plus all of the admin and the recording and the editing and the socials and the resources,
campaigns,
and the follow-up and all of that. I think we're bloody awesome. So I'm going to give a big just being awesome.
I'd echo that. I'm exhausted just thinking about it. My God, logistics and stuff. Mind-blowing.
So Ben, do you want to give us your intro first? So tell us a bit about you and tell our lovely audience a bit about you.
Yeah, wonderful. I suppose first and foremost, thanks for squeezing me in today. I do appreciate that. I'm Ben Rainforthgott. I've been in the wonderful world of HR for a very long time, and probably the last 10 plus years in very senior HR leadership roles. I have worked globally, so I've worked across Asia Pacific, New Zealand, Australia, returned to the UK. It's probably 6 years in May. I just don't know where that time has gone. And equally done a little bit of consulting and a little bit of everything. And I suppose in prefacing that is, I love what I do in HR, even though it is a massive challenge at times, but I absolutely love it. And I think certainly from where I am currently, we'll probably get into some of that detail, is probably what has led to some of that internal shock and awe, because almost being I was going to say Iron Lady. I probably get referred to that quite a lot, actually.
I've been called that too.
I've been called way worse, though.
Oh, I know. I tell you,
that was one of my nicest.
We could all write a book.
Yes.
Skin as thick as an elephant makes it hard for the Botox needles to go through after all those years with the thick skin. But yeah, I suppose with me has always been that passion, and I suppose I would always describe myself as truly people-centric and authentic, being the dialer up of the moral compass to give people the voice and the opportunity that they deserve, and equally a very open and transparent leader, which is about paving the way for my people to shine and to let them learn the skill and ability. So I suppose where I came to pre-Christmas has been a bit of a shocker. We're probably still midst of that. So every day is a little bit around getting to grips. And I suppose the big thing for me is that there is that massive void in the brain that you use so much in work time, which is about sharing my story today about how I am sort of tippy-toeing and needing to go back in to feed that void, but equally learning as we go, and just sort of sharing that in the life moment with people. So thanks for having me along. I'll try not to cry.
No, well, sometimes the crying's good, to be honest. It's good for our PR, so cry away. I think
it's actually part of my marketing as well. You don't have to cry, but you may do.
when I did my first session with Kelly, I'm happy to share this. When I did my first session with Kelly, I don't think I've ever snotted so much in a Zoom call in my entire life. Like by the end of it, I genuinely, can you remember this, Kelly? By the end, I was like, proper gross. So yeah,
we
Kelly,
did have, we did have. I mean, you're obviously very beautiful, and I appreciate you very much as a friend. But yes, it was full on ugly cry, like snot bubbles, the lot. We had it all. We had it all.
Yeah, so please don't be scared of crying, and yeah, if you can beat a snot bubble, then yeah, then all good for you.
You're sitting that stall up there.
But thank you so much for coming in. What I think is really interesting about your perspective, Ben, there's a couple of bits here, but I think what's really interesting, particularly probably for people that are going to be watching this, is that you are essentially very, very close in that burnout space. You know, you're coming out of the tail end of it, but you're still very much in that space. And I just wondered, I guess for me, it's about how you've managed to get that courage really to come on such a public forum and share your burnout story. What's brought you here?
Yeah, I suppose it's twofold. I think, as we all aware, there's quite a lot of stigma and there's quite a lot of patch protection when it comes to talking about topics like this. I think equally as well, being a male, there's a lot of stigma pertaining to guys having to sort of, be staunch and just sort of move through it. But most importantly for me is, I think, not recognizing the signs and symptoms for probably quite a long period of time last year, and it just almost coming out of the blue, and it hit me like a train, and it knocked me for six and put me into a tailspin. And I suppose sharing that stuff, it is difficult, and the experience is different from everybody. But I suppose the biggest eye-opener for me was where I almost felt like I fell into that vortex of self-doubt and doom, and really looking around, and there wasn't a huge amount of people that I could feel comfortable or confident wanting to speak to it, because I felt a bit stupid. And equally, I think the lead up to where I got to in December, I had started to ostracize so many people, so many different relationships, just to try and create some self-preservation for my own ability to almost hang on by those pinky nails and get through it. And I suppose that was my biggest reflection. But almost there's pockets of leading up to what I call D-Day, which for me was the 13th of December, where I thought, I'm just going to have to pop the pin because I can't. And I thought it's not only going to be detriment for me and my professional environment, but I just had nothing left in the tank for anybody. And that was a massive shock. And equally, I'm great with timing. I buy a house at the wrong bloody time. I take a mortgage at the wrong time. I decide to have a burnout breakdown at the wrong time as we sort of lead into Christmas and everybody's like enormously busy and whatever else. So for me, I suppose it was the shock. And equally, some of the struggles, there isn't a magic pill. You go to your GP, you get a referral, you have to self-refer. And I suppose where I've been at, which is coming today, which is part of my healing strategy, has actually been in the place where I feel I'm able to open up and have the conversation. And I know that I'll be having more of a detailed conversation as I sort of step back into the workplace next week. But, almost share my personal journey that's been through that, because I think there's a lot of stigma. It's like you get called lazy, or, you're bone idle, or you need to get a grip, or you need to do that. And there's a whole load of stuff that come through, and that just sort of pecks at your head constantly. And I suppose before this, you sort of go into it thinking you burn out, you take some step back, you might join the gym or go for a walk. There's been days I've just not been asked, like coming on here today, jumping in the shower, putting the quiff in, sort of trying to get in that work mode it's been exhausting in itself. But for me, it's part of that step forward around the fact that you've got to set a little bit of a mini milestone and sort of see how we go through with stuff. And there is a bit of that fear factor, because I do think the resilience has definitely been knocked. The confidence feels a bit knocked. And I suppose pre the situation that I'd been in, being a very strong, present, physical leader, just feel a bit weak and a little bit bruised at the moment. And that journey of the unknown of going back, which personally for me, I want to go back because I'm missing the void of the busyness and doing my job and the passion that makes me the person that I am. But equally, I don't know. You know, it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. It's going to be an evolving journey, and I need to not build the boulders on my back and keep carrying the boulders around. And that's some of the longer term, in the moment, short term, medium, long term strategy that I need to work through. And I suppose a recognition from what I've learned very early on is I can't do that on my own. So I've had to sort of be like, I'm going to have to approach and ask for some help and guidance, for some signposting to sort of block out the mindset around having a negative connotation when it comes to things like CBT, around taking some time out to have a bit more of a positive disposition instead of always looking at the negative, and just be more environmentally aware, I think is where I'm at the moment. And that equally through my personal life is rebuilding that resilience back up with my husband, with my family, with my friendship group. It's sort of like baby steps, day by day by day. And almost having that robustness that I don't need somebody to check in on me all the time, or, whilst I think stuff comes from a good place at times, sometimes it feels a bit false and it feels a bit forced. So I've equally got to find that strategy to say, you're getting on my nerves a little bit by sending me a message at 9 o'clock every morning. I don't need sort of curtailing into that. So for me, it just feels like that ground zero, that rebuild of steps and platforms to get me back in a healthy mindset, but more of a positive mindset around making sure I've got the strength and the resilience. And I just don't know. at the moment. Who knows? Could be hunky-dory, or I could put my pinky toes back in next week and go too soon. But I suppose that's part of my personal strategy, and equally it's driven by, we go to work for the love of work at times, but equally we go to work because it needs to support our lifestyles, our families and our finances. And there's the other burdens that sort of peck at the back of your head as well, in regard to making sure that, you're not from a medium to longer term perspective, particularly in this environment, that you're not going to be left on skid row. And then try not to angst and worry about that on top of everything else that sort of is coming down the track at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it might be, and Kelly, feel free to chime in, because I know you've had similar kind of conversations, but to give you some cold comfort with all of the conversations I've had this week, there has been this worry about appearing like a failure. There has been this piece about feeling really raw and vulnerable after having then been through a period of burnout, and then this piece around like resilience, energy left in the tank kind of stuff. And I really resonated with what you said about like getting your hair done and getting ready for work just took it out of you, because that's where I was. Certainly when I was kind of coming back through burnout, and even now when I'm living with that fatigue that I've now been left with, is some days I just don't have it in the tank. And it was a really new thing for me. And I feel like there's some similarities in there around, when you're a 150 mile an hour person and then you get to burnout where you're forced to stop. How do you get back to that is a real challenge. And it's almost a mindset shift of, actually 150% isn't good for anybody, and I need to work out what my 75% is, because that's still the equivalent of someone else's 110. And I think that's just, I find it fascinating that you're in that space as well. And I think one of the things that really helped me, you might have heard of it already, but is spoon theory about energy. So we all have a fixed number of spoons per day. I want to say it's like 12 maybe. And for somebody who it's used for chronic illness, but the same principle around, resilience. You will have like 12 spoons per day. For somebody who's chronically ill, just having a shower and drying your hair will take 5 spoons. And so where for a normal, typical level of resilience human, it will take 1 spoon. And so all of a sudden you're giving away almost 50% of your energy for the day just to get the face on, get ready and get dressed. And so I think that's a really interesting concept to think about when we're in that recovery space. So yeah, it might be something to look up if you haven't heard of it already, but it was really powerful for me to look at spoon theory. So what, Kelly, you go for it.
Yeah, I would because I think we had a brief chat last night, didn't we? I know we'd exchanged a couple of text messages before Christmas. I know that in your head before Christmas, you were like, I've just got to get through to Christmas.
Yeah.
Right. I've just got to get through to Christmas. And we know that from Burnout, what our brain is trying to do, whilst we are still pushing through and doing all of that stuff, is basically our brain is trying to keep us safe, right? Taking a rest in amongst all of the chaos and all of the rush and all of the madness is not our brain's initial trigger, right? Because our body is in such that high stress state that it thinks there is danger, and therefore we've got to keep moving. Because if we stop, we're going to get eaten by the danger, right? We're going to get attacked, and that's the primitive part of our brain. It's very common for all of us when we get to burnout, and ultimately, I think it is that part that doesn't switch where it needs to that gets us to the point of burnout, right? Because otherwise, you'd probably stopped months ago and said, "I need a bit of a break." Michelle and I would have probably stopped years ago,
Yeah.
before we kind of got to that point. But I wonder, with it being so fresh, I wonder if you saying like, I've just got to get through, I've just got to keep going, because I think so many of us have this in like almost, it is this kind of line in the sand, isn't it? Right, I've got to get through to Christmas, I've got to get through to my holiday, I've got to get through to the summer, I've got to wait until we've had the house move, or I've got the qualification, or the kids are at school, or the kids are at uni, or whatever it is it might be. And from your perspective, what was that, I suppose, the kind of inner voice? What was it telling you? Why was it telling you that you needed to keep going? And what do you think you were trying to keep going for?
Yeah. And I think that's a massive hard question to sort of ask. And I suppose it goes back to the bit where if I think back to last year, everybody has really busy years, and you sort of get through, and everybody's got stuff going on in life. I absolutely get it. And I suppose for me, from a mental resilience perspective, it hadn't impacted me before. But when I've sort of diagnosed stuff, some of those massive rocks that I were holding on my shoulders, through juggling work, through waiting for my husband's spousal visa, through house moves, so through some of that life stuff that I would normally be in what I would call a natural coping mechanism, I could feel slowly eroding away. And when I've sort of taken that stock and looked back around where I've cancelled, meeting friends for dinner, or doing a dog walk with the family, or just basically becoming a recluse, I suppose they were the symptoms that I was just turning a blind eye to. And I was just psychologically telling myself that you're just tired, you'll be all right, you'll get there.
Yeah.
Probably two things leading up to December for me is, I'm happy to share. I reached out, we had exchanged a couple of text messages, Kelly. You and I, Michelle, have known each other for a number of years, and you've been a massive advocate and a massive supporter for that, which I do appreciate. But I suppose the thing, December for me was sort of a weird month, and it often can be a bit of a weird month because it's sort of, things have happened in the past and you sort of put them away in little boxes in your head. And two critical things happened. I was asked as part of my role to facilitate a men's mental health session, which was very open, it was very raw. And about a day after that, I just didn't feel, something clicked. It was almost like Pandora's box had been completely opened inside my head, and everything was just filtering and flooding through. And I thought, I'll be fine. I can do it. I've got another 3 and a bit weeks. I can get through till Christmas. I can have some time off and recharge. And I was due to travel down to work on the 13th, and I had been up all night on the 12th, pacing the floor. I couldn't get to sleep. I felt sick. I felt like I was losing my mind. And I had to message work and said, I just can't do it. I can't be there today. It had triggered like a panic attack on top of a panic attack on top of a panic attack. And I thought, enough's enough. I just need to pop the pin, which is what I did. And then I almost fell into that really weird zone of being so super busy, but then everybody being so super busy because of the period, and just the level of what I personally felt was just some self-isolation, because when I wanted to put my head above the parapet and say, hey, I need a little bit of a natter, I didn't feel like I could do it, because you sort of absorb that everybody else is really busy and they've got a lot of stuff going on. And that was a really scary space for me for those first couple of weeks. But I just, through my own personal strategy, thought, you need to delete the work apps off your phone. You need to remove the stuff that's available at your fingertips. You know, I opened the laptop this morning and blew all the dust and the cobwebs off, because it's not been opened for so long. And almost set myself some mini milestones around finding some of that stuff that I probably used to take for granted, like taking my dogs for a walk and not being a shouty schnauzer dad at them continually, or, you know, barking at my husband because he put the milk on the wrong shelf in the fridge and stuff like that, around just removing some of the stuff around. I just need not to give a rat's backside about some of this stuff, and some of those mini coping strategies. And then day by day, I suppose those little bits is around where I built up some of that personal self-resilience. Some days are better than others, you know, some things trigger you more than other things, and I suppose it's just finding that sort of strategy. But it's sort of learning day by day around where I know where things are starting to nip at the back of my head. You know, like I used to always watch BBC Breakfast with a coffee and whatever else, and now I have to divert and do something else, because it's almost, you can feel the blood pressure coming up and the annoyance and the anger starting to bubble again. And that for me is a recognition that I need to remove that distraction, because it's not actually there's nothing I can do to control in that environment. So I suppose that's where I am at the minute. I suppose from a professional perspective, you know, I miss the joys and non-joys of working as an HR professional, to put politically. You know, I miss the interaction that I have with my fabulous team, and the work that we've got to go on. So that's the sort of stuff for me where I'm started in my mindset at the minute. I need to take some steps back into that environment, but I need to be mindful as I'm going back into that environment as well. You know, somebody messaged me this morning and said, great that you're coming back next week, but please do not come back at 1,000,000 miles an hour on a boom and bust cycle. And that's going to be really bloody hard for me, because I do move at 1,000,000 miles an hour. But I suppose that self-reflection and just having things to sort of check and adjust against means I'm not going to be able to do that. You know, I'm going to have to go back granny stepping in, and probably more with a mindset of self-preservation, because without preserving oneself, I can't provide that leadership or that out of work marital support or friendship support or whatever support I need to do, because you've got, you know, as you say, if you've got nothing in the tank, you've got nothing to give. So yeah, that's probably where I am at in the here and now. And I'll be honest, it feels really weird. It feels really, really weird. It feels positive that I feel like I have taken back some control. But, you know, even having this conversation now, it's sort of like, it feels a bit like Sandra Bullock and Bird Box. It's like I've been locked in the car at 1,000,000 miles an hour and I don't know where I'm going, and I'm trying to have a peek. But that's sort of exciting and scary at the same time. And I think that's part of that journey of recovery and getting back into a space where I personally feel like I'm going to have more control over the environmental settings, but more importantly for me around that mental control, and reducing the, you know, those triggers of just weird anger emotion that sort of comes out. You know, I'm not an angry person. You know, I'm normally quite very colourful and very forward and whatever else. And I had said to my husband, you know, as it went in, I said, I just feel like I've imploded myself, like I'm a shell of this horrible, you know, angry Victor Meldrew type of character, instead of, you know, some of that fun and some of the invested stuff that I think has been eroded for me over the last 6-12 months, if not a little bit longer, perhaps.
And one of the things that people have been, you know, outside of these live conversations, but that people have been certainly talking to me about, has been about, okay, I've noticed the signs. I know how I'm going to feel. Like, I know what it's like. I think I'm there. But a lot of what's been coming back has been, you know, what's been the most helpful thing to get you back to yourself. So for the people that are probably going to be watching this on playback or watching us live, what's been the most helpful thing for you over this sort of, it's been a month now, isn't it? But this month-long period for getting yourself back, do you think?
Stepping out of work. Absolutely, has been the most important thing. As much as it really irked and grated me to have to do it, that was the most important, because, as I say, on reflection, you know, it's a multitude of things that go on daily lives, but there was nothing left for anything, because all of the energy and the time and the commitment and the at times falsism and narcissism went into the Monday to Friday, and there was nothing else left. And I suppose that for me on reflection was, as I said, played some of that detriment, because I'd been such a grumpy ass and, you know, barking and biting at people outside of the work environments. People were a little bit skeptical, and, you know, some friendships have certainly been impacted through that. So for me, as much as it was a hard call to make, recognizing that I needed to pop the pin was the biggest thing and the scariest thing. And then just the awareness as well. And I suppose that's what shocked me, the awareness that there isn't a magic pill you can take, or there's not a magic sort of formula that you can go through. And it's been tough for me, because really been on support for a lot of people, both professionally and outside of work in my personal life. It's taken a lot for me to sort of tap some people on the shoulder and say, hey, I need a bit of a safe ear, or I need a bit of a chat, or, you know, can you kind of help me through that? And that's still very much, you know, the journey that I think will be there for, you know, not the next couple of days or the next couple of weeks or the next, who knows, you know, that the rebuild status for me is I'm right on the precipice of taking that first step on rebuild. But rebuilding around, as I've sort of said, checking those triggers, checking those reactions, probably being a little bit more open. And what I've sort of had to say to myself is I need to be more honest with myself, instead of, you know, covering stuff in glitter when they're behind the scenes is probably not that palatable, because it doesn't work for me, and equally it comes as a shocker for people in my wider system. And that's been some of my feedback, which is it just completely came out of the blue for so many people, not only for me, you know, inside the professional environment, from a friendships perspective. And that equally is part of that learning, and what I'm going through at the moment is a massive discovery, because people are still blown away. You know, you're like have been a rod of iron with so much positivity and general disposition that it feels a bit alien. And I sort of recognize and I understand that, and that's been one of my learnings as well, which is you do come across a lot different to people when you start that self-courageous journey around opening up about what you are physically going through. And I think people need to be ready for that as well, because it's almost self-education and then supporting other people around the education. And as I say, just being honest, you know, I did it yesterday, which is I don't need a phone call at 9 o'clock. You know, I'm not going to drop off the planet, and I know you're trying to help, but I need to let you know that actually probably causes me more anxiety around having the need to respond versus where the good place it's coming through from you. And that's what I mean around that. Biggest lesson for me is around understanding self-learning and being more open, and probably like doing this today is being courageous and just sharing the rawness of a situation, and doing it wholesomely. Because the other stuff, you know, that you hear all the time, there's all sorts of stuff going on in the world, and there's all sorts of stuff going on with other people, and you hear that. And that's why I say that cycle of self-pity and doom for me was really scary. But I think everybody has to go through that to sort of say, I need to sort of crawl back out, and I need a little bit of support and a little bit of time, a little bit of space as we do it.
Yeah, I know Kelly and I speak about this, but everybody has to find their own version of what rock bottom is, don't they? And it's almost like you can keep pointing at the signs and you can keep saying the thing, but actually everybody has to hit that. I think you called it pulling the pin, didn't you? But everyone has to hit their own version of what that hitting the bottom, pulling the pin, whatever that is.
Yes. And Ben, can I ask about, you've mentioned resilience a few times, and I think it's really interesting what you said there, right? This is, not only did it come as a surprise to you, although you were feeling or seeing some of the signs in yourself, you were able to clearly very well put on the face, put on the smile, sprinkle everything in glitter, be the, hey, everything's fine. And I wonder if, with hindsight, and maybe again as part of your recovery and kind of journey back to yourself for you, but also as you kind of go back into work next week, whether resilience has played a part in that. So what Michelle and I have spoken about this, it's come up a lot with the conversations that we've had, and I think we look at and there, I mean, every organization I think last year was like, let's do resilience training. And I think basically, I think what I've kind of come over the years, I've come to realize that basically what we mean by resilience is we're gonna put you in armor because we know that things are really crap, and we just want to put you in enough armor as possible so that none of it really gets to you, because you just got to keep going. And I was definitely, I was an 80s baby, joined the full-time world of work kind of late 90s, but every single thing that I was kind of led to believe was that we just get back on the horse, right? You keep going, you don't moan, you just keep going. If you want success, you've got to work hard. You need resilience, you need broad shoulders, right? You've got to stomach this stuff. You've got to keep going. You get back on the horse, back on the bike, work hard, play hard, keep on going, keep on going, keep on going. And I think particularly in HR, we have to have the face on, right? We have to continue to maintain that professionalism. We can mask it, I think, extremely well, because we are having that crap thrown at us every single day, day in and day out. Yep. So where you said you need to kind of relook and rebuild some of that personal resilience around in the workplace, I wonder if it is resilience, or whether it could be something like boundaries, or it's more self-awareness, or it could be something else, because there is the danger, and Michelle and I have been through this more than once, there is the danger, we go through it once, we then put on our resilience armor that says nothing is going to touch me ever again, and then we end up in exactly the same bloody place, because we've been taught that we have to be resilient, we have to keep going, we have to put the face on. And so I wonder, where you've mentioned resilience, is it that? Or, and again, I get this is very raw, it's only been a really short space of time. Or could it be something else that needs to change for you, so that you don't have to keep putting on that armor and keep going, where actually you can say enough is enough and I'm out?
Yeah, and I think that's great. I think that's a great topic to come on to. I suppose for me, workplace resilience is not what I'm talking about. I think I'm big enough, ugly enough to have seen every flavouring of what needs to happen from a people-related perspective. And if I'm being honest, from my observations globally, people are the same, irrespective of what country they come from and whatever else. I think what causes problems in organizations is magpie syndrome, a lack of focus, a whole load of naff bloody values and behaviors, which is just tokenistic BS, and just not that recognition. So I think it can come in every flavor, but equally it all sort of needs to be broken down into what I often look at is, what is the organization's maturity and capability of doing some of this stuff? Because actually it is just stuff. We churn out things from the sausage factory all the time, and it's either taken on board, and if it's brilliant, as we all know as HR professionals, HR had naff all to do with it, whereas if something turns to absolute brown, big piles of brown, it's always the HR's fault. And I think people build up that professional resilience because that's the resilience you need within the profession. When I talk to resilience, it's around me personally removing some of the veneer BS that I've put on. And it's the veneer BS that I've put on outside of work where I'm nodding and agreeing and everything's fine and hunky-dory and we're not talking about that, or I'm overextending people, you know, at the pub on a Friday with all their HR related problems and taking all their rocks and boulders on my back. And then that for me is where I'm talking about that resilience, and that's that journey around what I'm finding at the moment is some of that corrective action that I'm having to put in, which is actually, it's not that I don't give a monkeys, because I do, it's just that I don't have the bandwidth here and now. So it's resetting boundaries, I suppose, to me back, you know, and that's the unknown, and some of that strategy stuff when I go back is I understand the boundaries, and I think there needs to be, for everybody, probably a little bit more honesty and openness in conversations, and just removing some of the white noise that happens continually, you know, relitigation after relitigation after relitigation. You know, it's like that stuff, I think, irrespective of somebody's role or what they're doing in the organization, is what really wears people down, because there is not a clear line of sight, and there's stuff coming in, it's confused, and it's, I think societally that people are seeing that as well, because there's so much additional pressure that's sort of washing through, and the pressure cooker's there. So when I talk to resilience, it's about how I'm going to restack here outside of work that will make me a better person inside of work. And I need to find a strategy around, you know, it can't be 80 hours a week continually, because it just doesn't work. It's around value investment, and I suppose they're the bits that I need to look at as I sort of embark around my return to work next week. Where is my value contribution? How much grip has an organization got? How much risk appetite do they want to do? And are we focused about doing the right things, or are we just doing stuff from a tokenistic value? And that will come with some courageous conversation, because if it's just a fact of churning some stuff out because it looks nice and shiny and we want to put it in a report, great. But let's be honest about that, because the depth underneath that, as I think, is where the honesty conversation needs to come through, from that people moral perspective, which is, what does this mean for our people, and how can we better support? Because change is ongoing, cyclical change is ongoing, life pressure change is ongoing, and if, you know, observationally from my networks, and you'll speak to a lot more HR professionals and business people, I think there's a lot of people that are scratching their heads and are just absolutely perplexed and confused that all organizations just feel really chaotic, and they can't put their finger on the button, and people are feeling devalued or demotivated, or, you know, something shiny comes in to sort of rev it up. And I think that for me has been a shocker as well. And I think it's just the nature of the beast, potentially around out the pandemic, you know, the cost of living crisis, just whatever's going on. It just seems to feel this something turbulently bubbling all over the place, that I think as HR professionals we are omnipresent of. But I think sometimes we don't get gifted that voice of inclusion. And that's massively demoralizing for our profession. Yeah.
I mean, we see that every single day, Michelle and I. You're seeing it, feeling it, experiencing it, surrounded by it. So yeah, it's exactly the same. So you've touched on going back next week. What do you need if we were to say complete blank sheet of paper, and maybe even, right, forgetting that you know the organization that you work in, but going back next week, being through what you've been through, for you to walk back in on Monday and feel heard and seen and supported, what do you need when you get back next week?
Oh gosh, that's a really hard one, isn't it? I suppose blank sheet of paper for me would be the magic 6 numbers on the lotto that we probably all aspire to.
Have you bought a ticket, Ben? Have you bought your ticket?
I remember being in it to win it. I suppose it's twofold. You know, the communication is back and forward at the moment. I've got to catch up very shortly. I've sort of set my stall out around potentially what I need Monday to look like, which is getting back up to speed or having some clarity around some of that stuff, and just re-energizing around how that comes back into. I need to have that conversation because obviously I haven't had it at the moment, and I need to sort of see what that looks like. I think for me it will be phased. I don't know what that phase is going to look and feel like. But it's not boom or bust. It's not a, oh, boom, I've been off for 4 weeks. Here I am. Let's go. So I think it needs to sort of be broken down. I think there's a number of conversations around refocus, rebalance, trust and integrity, and I probably equally as well it needs a challenge. And I do challenge, but I think that challenge has not been heard, and that equally has come through some of my frustration when I haven't been feeling well mentally. So it's played as one of those little things that are pecking at the back of your head constantly, and that's going to be difficult because irrespective around how you go that out, having a courageous conversation and calling stuff out, it's going to piss people off. But we've almost need to find ground zero and common ground. And I, work for a very supportive employer. We've got a great supportive boss. I absolutely think we can get back to where we need to get back to. But the biggest lesson for me will be is not pushing myself back into a million miles an hour, and that honesty, what's going on up here and how much I can commit to needs to come through, as well as managing those demons that sort of sit behind around, who's talking about you at the water cooler and, it's gone a bit Looney Tune or whatever else, or still having the capability to do the job. I just need to slay those demons as they go through, because fundamentally, and I wouldn't have got to my position and stature in my career without being bloody good at what I do. And it's just remembering that, but it's remembering it in bite-sized pieces. And I suppose it's therefore that value contribution as I go back into stuff, which is, forget to, I don't know, 2 o'clock and I need to tap out because I'm done. But I need to have that conversation and be open about it. Yeah.
So openness, trust, clarity, communication. And I suppose then you're also kind of saying around some kind of boundaries and some flex in order for you to feel that you've got what you need from Monday, and then kind of see what happens after that.
Yeah. And I suppose some of it's slaying some of the topical conversation that will probably come up, and I can you can hear it now. I've observed it in other organizations, which is, well, if it's sent you like this, is it the right organization for you? That's BS. Do you know what I mean? So it's facing into that, which is thanks for that contribution, but I'm not going to have that seed planted in my head to allow it to be watered and erode my self-worth. So again, it's having that courageousness of the conviction, because I think everybody would know if it's not the right environment for somebody, you elect to remove yourself. And this is completely different than an environmental setting. And I've been very clear about that. It's not about an inability or capability to do what I need to do, because I can do it. It's not about whether it's the right fit, square peg, round hole, because I've been there for almost 3 years and I've gone through that journey of discovery. It physically is that I got to a point last year with everything happening in my grey matter that just completely blindsided me, and that's why I've had to take myself out of that equation. And that's the honesty approach that I'm going back in with it. So I doesn't need to be kid gloves. It doesn't need to be questions about capability, because that's not there at a senior level. And I suppose it's how we erode those perceptions of going back in, that actually it isn't a self-failure, as much as I judged myself on that very early on, and I still have those demons behind. It's nobody knows. There isn't a blueprint for people, as we know in HR, and I suppose it's just having that openness and the dialogue that needs to happen, and then being able to call it. And I suppose that's why, equally as we discussed last night, Kelly and Michelle, around coming on here, where it's very raw and is still unknown at the moment, is around being open and sharing that journey back to recovery, because I think that's important. Because I think, as we will all see and realize, we have so many tokenistic days with banners and this and this and this, and it goes. But this is more than that. It's a culmination of many different factors for individually, personally, and for individuals, and people's stories, as you all know, are going to be completely different. And and if that gives somebody the courage of conviction, or even a little soundbite, and the stuff that you sort of remember, I think is important, because people need to latch on to, to some of those mechanisms around getting them back to, step one from ground zero.
Thank you. I suppose just finally, I say finally, and then I've got like 25 more questions. But again, I'm conscious of time. I'm going to ask just one, and then I'm going to physically put myself on mute so that I can shut up and hand back to Michelle. But from your perspective, if there's anybody watching this that is right now where you were before Christmas, what would you say to them, tell them, advise them, guide them, whatever?
I would say, please listen to your inner voice, because you need to stop. And you need to stop, and there isn't a magic formula. You just need to turn yourself inside for a bit. It's almost like you need to turn yourself into a nice fluffy blanket and listen to your head, and not try and eat the elephant in one bite. Listen to your head. Find them little self nuggets of things that create some joy, because you've got to create some little sparkles of joy to sort of evaluate and move yourself forward on the journey. And I'd say it's not wrong. It's not being caused by you. It's just a complex scenario, a number of things that are going to come forward. But my advice is, listen to your head. Stop now. Take stock, regroup, and then be kind to yourself as you're planning and you're navigating your way through. Because, as I said, there isn't a magic helpline. There's not a magic pill. There's not a magic formula. You just need to find that. And it's a little bit like the sparkle. This sounds really naff. I'm probably going to get back to my naffness now, but it's the end bit of the never-ending story. When there's that one grain of sand and it's got that spark of light. That's what I latched onto. That actually you can't rebuild utopia without looking after and caressing and caring for that one grain of light that sort of is going to get you through. But do it at your own pace as well.
Thank you. I'm going to go on mute now. Thank you.
Kelly's gone on mute. I feel like we should take some kind of screenshot of this. Keep it.
I'm going to swear at you, look, because you've made me come back.
You've come off mute. You've come off mute.
You did it on purpose because you knew that I'd react to
I was
that.
goading you, yeah. I think that lasted 10 seconds. Well done. I'm proud of you.
I'm doing it now. Bye.
Just before we finish, Ben, I just wanted to draw your attention to a comment that we've had from David King that says, Ben, your insights and ability to put into words which many can feel is a gift. Thank you. So I feel like that's important.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. So Kelly has, I think, another 1 or 2 conversations for today, but this is now our final day of our big burnout conversation week. You will be able to catch Kelly and I together. It's like a rarity, isn't it, getting us together? But you'll be able to catch Kelly and I together on Monday next week, where we'll be pulling together our kind of thoughts, feelings, reflections, and wrap-up notes from this week. So you can catch us live on Kelly's profile, much like you have today, with our wrap-up notes from the week. But Ben, thank you so much. It has been really powerful to hear you come on the call today, and thank you for being so brave and courageous in coming at such a challenging time, a new time in your recovery. So I know that you would have helped so many people by sharing your story with us today. So thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I just want to say good luck for next week, right?
Yes.
Michelle and I have been there. Lots of other people that are watching this may or may not. And yeah, I think just, stay true to you. We appreciate you. We appreciate you coming today, because as we mentioned yesterday, we know this is raw. So thank you. I want to say good luck next week, and just ensure that you continue to put you first, because there is only one of you, one of you, and we want to preserve that as long as possible.
Thank you. And thank you both for having me. I really do appreciate it as well. So thank you.
You're so welcome. You are so welcome. Thank you, Kelly. I will let you press the big red button, because we have fini. So bye, everybody. Jazz hands.